So yeah, that was the original character, was El Loco Uno. Then I transitioned into the Masterpiece. Ran with that for quite a while. For the large majority of pretty much the first era of SCW. And then decided that at one point I wanted a little bit of a run as a babyface.
Yeah. And
Crotch, who does a lot of our booking and stuff, was like, "You're nuts." He's like, "These people will never cheer you."
Yeah.
And we set it up. There was a storyline, and Merrick Brave and Mason Beck and a bunch of them at one of our shows, I had become slowly transitioned over to being a babyface, and the commissioner at the time, I ran the company, basically put my foot down, exerted my authority against people such as Merrick Brave, keeping those guys in line and whatever. And I think what it had come down to is I want to say I cut a babyface promo talking about how I used to turn my nose at people, act like I was better than people, but in all actuality, I grew up in a trailer park in Coal Valley. My dad was a hard worker, blue collar. There was a lot of times that, we'd have chipped beef on toast for dinner, and there wasn't a lot to eat, and really threw myself out there as far as who I actually was, and tried to make myself more relatable to the fans after years of turning my nose up at them, acting like I was better than them. So anyway,
did they take to that, or was it a hard sell at first?
I think it went over pretty well fairly quickly. I think it didn't take too long to get them to buy into it, and then the more I kind of stepped up and put my foot down and enforced the rules against guys like Merrick Brave and the top heels in SCW at the time, the more they were believing in me. Anyway, it all culminated in a storyline down on 11th Street at a Walgreens building that we had started renting. And I remember I did something, I can't remember what I did. As you get older, you're going to forget stuff, kids. But I pissed off Merrick Brave. I can't remember exactly what I did. Anyway, make a long story short, they attacked me, beat me up, taped me to the ropes. My brother, who was head of security at the time, and we'd kind of got to the point where we made it obvious that was my brother and whatever. He was involved in the storyline. He got beat up, restrained or whatever, and Mason Beck and Merrick Brave, and some people hate the fact I'm going to bring up this storyline because they hated it, kidnapped my wife at the time. And so there was probably a 6-month storyline running where they had kidnapped my wife and I was trying to get her back. And I remember Crotch just absolutely hated that story. I was like, it's effing stupid. He's like, why would you just call the cops? He's like, and it was sort of my brainchild as far as having her use her in the storyline as far as her being in peril. But it was never my idea for her to get kidnapped.
Yeah.
And so, but when you look back at some of the old school wrestling and stuff, there's a lot of things that happen there. It's like, well, why did they handle it that way? Why didn't they call the police? Right. So to me, it was just kind of one of those things. Yeah, it's kind of dumb, but wrestling fans, so they'll buy into it. No offense, guys. But so yeah, that was the next transition was. Come to find out, what had happened was Jake Ryder, who was. I think I was director of my official title was director of day-to-day operations, and he was commissioner. It was some convoluted thing where we were both authority figures, but I was his boss. Eventually, it came to pass that what had happened was Jake Ryder had manipulated this entire situation. Unbeknownst, he was the man behind the curtain, pulling all the strings that set up the kidnapping of my wife and whatever to get me out of SCW so he could have control because he felt like I was holding him back. So it culminated in a match between myself and Merrick Brave, where what was it? No, that's what it was. I signed a contract. They told me if I signed a contract relieving myself of my abilities or my duties in SCW, then I would get then they would get my wife back.
Okay. So, I don't know. I love wrestling for that simple fact. Like you said, just the storyline. It's like, why wouldn't they just call the cops?
Right.
And then people would argue that by saying, well, it's professional wrestling. They work in a completely different, I guess, dimension, you would call it, as opposed to everybody else. But then you have the storylines where the heel doesn't want to deal with the faces. He's like, if you come near me, I'm calling the cops. What? But you won't call it on a kidnapping.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, I had signed that legal and binding document, and I want to say that legal and binding document, pulling back the curtain just a little bit again, I think somebody, when they gave me that document to sign, I think there was a drawing of a penis on it or something, just to see if I would be able to keep my composure as I'm writing this, or maybe that I'm confusing it with another contract. Maybe it was something there was some kind of a rib on that contract. But anyway,
it was a legal and binding.
Yeah, penis. It was a legal and binding penis. So I signed off on the contract, and lo and behold, you're done with SCW, and yeah, we're reneging, and you're not getting your wife back either. So then it was this whole big storyline where I was sneaking into the building, doing these different things, trying to get her back. I remember being in the ring. 11th Street. It was like the very next show after I'd been fired. Hiding underneath the ring for the first match, being in a hoodie, and it was, and I know you remember this name, Keith Venom Walker.
Yep. Absolutely.
Baby Batista. That guy was a monster. Don't let the baby part fool you. This was a big man. Being in the ring with Johnny Wisdom above me, at the time Johnny Wisdom was a baby face, and Keith Walker absolutely unloading him, and I'm underneath this ring, and I'm watching these boards, boom, 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 dust's falling down on me, and I think Johnny's absolutely getting killed there. Just waiting for my time to run in and basically attempt to, grab my wife and pull and try and steal her back, so to speak.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that ongoing where I continued to try and get her back. It ended up in a match between myself and Merrick Brave, where if I won, I would hit. If I beat Merrick Brave, I would have the opportunity to win back my wife, or I would have the opportunity to get my wife back.
Yeah,
is the way it was worded. So at this point, Keith Walker had left. He had left, signed a contract with Ohio Valley, with WWE. He was in WWE's developmental, so he had gone down there. And anyway, so it was Merrick Brave and myself in this match up, and a lot of people didn't know at the time because of the internet. Keith Walker had actually gotten released from his contract. They chose to go in a different direction, and so they had let him go. And so I'm in this match with Merrick Brave, and he's just absolutely kicking the crap out of me. And I remember, it's funny thing, the way the match started is the Bears Den was in attendance, and they're sitting there chanting, "Storm is gonna kill you." And I'm in the ring with Merrick Brave, one of the, in my opinion, one of the top indie talents in, all of the country. At the time, he was coming off an injury, so he wasn't quite what he used to be, but still, in my opinion, one of the best workers.
Absolutely.
And just playing straight up, ruthless, nasty villain, and then he's got this monster Mason Beck in his corner, and these fans are chanting that I'm going to kill him, and it was funny. But my in-laws at the time were in attendance and everything else. But anyway, make a long story short, what happened was there was a ref bump. Jake Ryder was special guest referee in this match because, it's fair. You get a chance to get your wife back if you beat him, but the guy who orchestrated this whole situation is a special guest referee.
Right.
But you've got to beat this other guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pulling the strings.
So anyway, Jake Ryder gets knocked out. Keith Walker runs in to the crowd. I think the crowd just went absolutely nuts because nobody expected it. The lights went out, came back up. Keith Walker's in the ring, hits Merrick Brave with his finisher, grabs my ass, had been knocked out, drags me over the top of him over the top of Merrick Brave for the pin. Wakes up Jake Ryder. Jake Ryder wakes up. 2, 3. And I win, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts. My music hits, whatever. Jake Ryder's like, wait, what? Him? The whole thing was he was dazed from getting knocked out. Didn't realize it was me pinning Merrick Brave.
Yeah.
Made the 3 count. Anyway, they decided, or at that point, it was announced, Mason Beck grabbed my wife, threw her over his shoulder, and took off out the door, and they said, no, we said that you would have the opportunity to get your wife back.
Yeah.
So they proceed to grab me, drag me out of the ring, and throw me out of the building, which brings me to, we can talk on this later, one of my favorite stories as far as interactions with fans during my career. So we can go back to that at whatever point you want. But anyway, this whole storyline just continued to be drug out over months and months and months, kind of like this whole spiel that I'm giving right now is being drug out over months and months. At least it seems that way. But it ended up finally ending in a match at the Beyond the Baseline over in Davenport, the old Mary Crest Gymnasium. Yeah. They had me cornered in the ring. They had all circled around me because Jake Ryder had called me out and said, "Hey, come out. We want you to be. I want to talk this out, man to man.
Yeah,
just me and you." So I come out to the ring and I'm standing there, and throughout the night they had fired Shane Hollister, they had fired Woody McGuire, they had fired Tank Roberts, Crotch. All these different people from SCW had been fired for various reasons as Jake Ryder's just continuing to mold this into his SCW.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm in the ring with Jake Ryder, and he's like, there's been, you come into this building unwelcome, this and that, blah, blah, blah. He's like, and you run out, you get drug out. He said the only way you're leaving this ring tonight is in a body bag.
Yeah.
And then out from the back, here comes Keith Walker, who at this point had turned on me, Mason Beck, America Brave, Nevin Knoxville, who had joined them. And so I'm absolutely circled in the middle of the ring. All these guys just absolutely ready to tear my head off.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, here runs Shane Hollister, Crotch, Tank Roberts, Woody McGuire, all of these different people that had fired, or that had been fired throughout the night, that I had rallied around me, and basically we cleared the ring of everybody, and then proceeded to take a trash can and put Merrick Brave's title in the trash can and set it on fire. And basically, at that point, I had called a war that it was going to be SCW. I basically introduced Jake Ryder and Merrick Brave and all of them to Pro Wrestling Next.
Yeah.
And there was going to be a war. Fast forward, so basically what it set up was a storyline where it was a best of 5 series in SCW, culminating in a steel cage match between Merrick Brave and Shane Hollister, being the final match. But if SCW won, then Pro Wrestling Next would dissolve and I would be gone and it would no longer be in existence. But if Pro Wrestling Next won, then SCW was gone.
Yeah.
And it would become Pro Wrestling Next. And make a long story short, it went over the top. We went over in that, and for a short period of time, SCW became Pro Wrestling Next. Still ran by the same people.
Absolutely.
Same characters.
Just a rebranding, basically.
Right, just basically a rebranding. So that was the next phase in the change of the character, who was just the baby face, Mark Storm in peril.
Yeah. Then after a while, I guess, for lack of a better term, there was backstage drama, and it seems like from the outside, because I wasn't with the company at the time, but it seems like from the outside the company kind of lost their footing and kind of faded off or stopped running shows for a little while, and then they came back. Was it 2014, 2013?
Was it? I want to say. Let me think here. I would say it was 2012 or 2013.
Okay.
So, because my daughter was still pretty little at the time. She was born in 2011.
Yeah.
So,
because I know about that time was when they started kind of putting the feelers out there, like, hey, we're thinking about restarting this, and getting the band back together, so to say.
Right.
And then, as the years went on, you went from managing Nathan Ironside and Mr. Elite to now, in the second coming of SCW, basically, you started a group where the likes of Nevin Knoxville has been with you. Merrick Brave was in your group for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the name of the the group in the Second Coming?
The Second Coming, basically the way it started was I was the babyface commissioner,
Yeah.
and basically in the role that Sean